Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 292 for the 13th of Elul in a leap year. So today we're going to begin a discussion of a topic which we had mentioned here and there previously in the Tanya, namely the idea of anthropomorphizing God. How we refer to God sometimes in human terms. So many of you are familiar with this idea that we talk sometimes about God's anger. This comes up in the Bible, or God's hand, God's finger, God's face. Sometimes we talk about that kind of stuff as well. And a simple understanding of this, as we've mentioned before, is that it's not that God actually has these features, God forbid, God's not a person, like we're a person, but rather we say these things because this is the only thing that we're able to understand. It's to make it easier on the human ear to be able to understand it. It's something that we can relate to because God is so lofty, God is so beyond our comprehension that using this human terminology is a way for us to understand him. So while that's true, and while that is definitely a very good way of looking at this idea and understanding these things, today we're going to be beginning an epistle that touches upon the subject in a kind of deeper manner. So what is this deeper manner? The deeper manner is that, in fact, there's something much more profound going on. You may have heard the idea that man was created in the image of God, and so what does that mean exactly? We're kind of going to understand that. So we've spoken about how when we look at the story of creation and we see how God created the entire world through his speech. So we again spoke about this previously in the Tanya. So we see that God created everything in the world through speech. He said, let there be light. There was light. He said, let there be a firmament, and there was a firmament. And there's one exception. When it comes to the creation of man, we actually see that rather than creating man through speech alone, God actually creates man through his breath, where he breathes his soul into him. And we've spoken about how this breath is actually something very intimate, and it's something a lot more intimate and a lot more personal than just pure speech alone, and how it's coming from the depth of who God really is. What this translates into in a manifest way, and this is going to be the topic of today's episode, is that if we want to come to an understanding of God, then one way to go about doing that is by looking at ourselves, by looking at man, by studying the makeup of who we are. And this can actually give us a glimpse into who God is. Not to, again, make the mistake and think that God is a person, but rather there are certain things, certain features that we have that are a mirror to God, and that can help us understand God. If we want to be really technical about this is where the idea of the spheros come in, the spheres. We spoke about the spheros before. The spheros are like these tools, kind of these vessels, sometimes referred to vessels, sometimes referred to as lights. It depends on the context, and they are the tools that God uses to manifest himself into reality, and to be able to give himself some kind of attribute. Sometimes the spheres are actually literally mapped out onto like an image of a human body because they have a human correspondence in terms of different parts of the body and where they're located. That, again, not to say that God actually, God forbid, has a body, but it can help us in understanding through looking at the body and through looking at the orientation of which sphere corresponds and is associated with which part of the body, can give us a sense of what each sphere is all about. So let's get into the text and see how the Alter Rebbe explains this. So this is the beginning of Epistle 15. So Epistle 15, the Alter Rebbe begins, and he says that we're going to try to understand the allegory and the metaphor of the sages about the idea of the spheros. meaning to say that it's known throughout the land that from the mouths of heavenly people, heavenly souls, who have enabled us to bring it closer to our mind, to be able to understand a little bit more this phrase that we see, this citation from Iyov, chapter 19, verse 26, where it says, "Umibsari echazeh Eloka," from my flesh shall I behold God. Okay, so what does that mean? So from my flesh, there's this verse that says, "From my flesh I shall behold God." How do you behold God from your flesh? Like you look at your hand, you look at the insides of a microscope or whatever, and you see God. Like, what does that mean? So the sages of blessed memory, they taught, says the Alter Rebbe, that we can actually come to understand a little bit of godliness from a person's soul that is vested in the flesh of a person, according to that which the sages taught. And this is based on a pasuk in Tehillim, chapter 103, verse 1, "Bochi nafshi v'gomer." So give praise, my Lord. And actually, if you look at the rest of the pasuk, which the Alter Rebbe doesn't quote here, but I'm going to quote it, where it says, "Bochi nafshi et Hashem v'chol krovai et shem kodsho," which literally means, "My soul bless the Lord and all my innards, His holy name." So again, it's a reference to this innards, to like a person's flesh blessing God. So what is this a reference to? Now the Alter Rebbe brings a teaching from the Gemara in Masechet Brachos, page 10a, where it says, just as the Holy One, blessed be He, permeate the world, so too does the soul permeate the body. So the Gemara basically is teaching that there's some kind of parallel between how it is that God permeates the universe in a way that we can look at it in a manner through which the soul permeates a body. And we can understand this through a teaching of the Zohar based on a pasuk in Bereshis chapter 2, verse 7, where it says, "V'yifach be'apav nishmat chaim," that, and He blew into his nostrils a soul of life. So again, so this is what we spoke about in the introduction, that Hashem created man through blowing life into him. And then the Zohar teaches on that the fact that He blew, anytime somebody blows, this breath, this exhale, this is coming from the innards of a person. So now to bring the point home, the Alter Rebbe says that even a soul that comes from the world of Asiya, which is like this lower world, the way that this soul comes about is through a very high union. It comes about through this union of Zer Anpin and Nukva of Asiya. So these are sound very abstract Kabbalistic concepts, but just to break it down, Zer Anpin is the masculine attributes. It's the 6 midos, the 6 attributes, the 6 emotive attributes, and Nukva is Malchus, it's the feminine attribute. And so these attributes of Asiya, they are what cause the unification of these masculine attributes with the feminine attribute, bring about these souls of Asiya. As well as also what else causes the production of these souls is where we have the mind of the world of Asiya, which is the aspect of the Chaya and the Neshama of the Zer Anpin and the Nukva. So again, a little abstract, but basically, so the Zer Anpin is what we can think of as the masculine emotions, and the Nukva is what we can think of as the feminine emotions, or really it's just one, it's that Malchus. And these emotions have a corresponding mind that comes with them, which is referred to as the Chaya and the Neshama. That's the intellectual faculties of each one of these emotive attributes. And so then when we think about this more deeply, again, getting a little bit more Kabbalistic here today, is that these aspects so we're still in this world of Asiya. All of this lofty stuff that we're talking about is still within the world of Asiya, which is the lowest of all the worlds. But when we talk about this fact that the lowest of all these worlds, the world of Asiya, has within it these aspects of the Zer Anpin of Asiya and the Nukva of Asiya, and the Zer Anpin and the Nukva of Asiya each have a Chaya and Neshama to it. Stay with me. So what are these Chaya and Neshama, which are also called the intellect of the Zer Anpin and the Nukva of Asiya? These are referred to as the external vessels of the Zer Anpin and the Nukva of Atzilus, which is actual godliness. So it might be helpful to take notes here and like maybe draw out a map, but I'll try to like explain this to the best of my ability. So again, this might require a little bit of review, but there's 4 basic worlds. The highest of all worlds is Atzilus. Atzilus is the one that is really, it's not even really a world. It's called the world of emanation, where there's no separation between its contents and God. It's totally just very permeable, and there's everything just manifests God in a totally clear way. And then the lowest of all the worlds is the world of Asiya, which is really the most dense of all the worlds. It hides God to the highest degree and everything like that. However, there's a connection between these 2 worlds, and that's what the Alter Rebbe is bringing home. And he's saying that when we get into the depth of the world of Asiya, this lowest world, and we get into like the inner aspect of this world of Asiya, which is ultimately the Zer Anpin and the Nukva, which ultimately has a mind to it as well, which is the Chaya and Neshama of that. So when we get into the inner aspect of this world of Asiya, that's actually the outer aspect of the world of Atzilus. So there's a connection there. That's kind of like where the bridge happens to the world of Atzilus. And when we talk about the world of Atzilus, we know that that's pure godliness. And from that place of the world of Atzilus, of those vessels, even though they're external vessels of the world of Atzilus, from there radiates the infinite light of God, which is hidden within the Chokhmah of Atzilus. The high level of Chokhmah, which is the first intellectual attribute of Atzilus, because we know that God and his garments are one in Atzilus, right? So again, it's like if we're saying that basically it's like if we say logically that the neshama and the chaya of the world of Asiya is really another way of saying the external vessels of Atzilus. And we know that Atzilus, external, internal, it's all God. It all manifests God in a clear and uninhibited way. Then that really is saying that it is true godliness. So this is why, to bring it back down to earth, the Alter Rebbe concludes this idea here, and he says that this is why we can see even in the soul of a person, then the infinite light of God is vested and is hidden with the chokhmah, with the light of the chokhmah inside of it. It's vested within a person to vivify the person, and through this, a person can come to understand a little bit about these supernal spheros, because they all manifest within his soul, which his soul is comprised of. So I know it was kind of like very abstract today, but just to kind of bring it all together, the basic idea, and we're going to be getting into this a little bit more, is that when we look at a person, it's not so simple when we just say like, oh, man was created in the image of God, or, we talk about God in these human terminologies and everything like that. It's not just words. What we're actually saying basically is that we contain an actual godliness within ourselves. And that even though when we look at the different attributes that we're made up of, like these different spheros and things like that, they are not manifestly God. If we go back enough to the source of what they are, they're coming from this place of Atzilus, which is true ultimate godliness, which means that we contain ourselves actual godliness that's uninhibited and pure. So that's it for today. I know a little bit abstract today, but we will continue along these lines tomorrow. So stick with it, and I will speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.